If you've played old school Runescape before, you may know that the vast majority of the NPCs you meet are fans of consuming alcohol. Across every region, you can find several establishments built for the sole purpose of serving precious alcohol to its citizens called bars, and I'm here to find the best bar in all of Gielinor. Today we're going to explore the bars in the Asgarnia region, in which we have 6 to check out. But what are the qualifications that make a great bar? I've broken it down into a simple scoring system based on a few key aspects. We'll start with addressing the location of the bar, as nobody wants to go too far out of the way just to get a drink. Then we'll assess the general decor and layout of the building, as that can play a big role in comfort and enjoyment. Lastly, we'll go over the menu options being served, as a larger menu gives the patrons more options to enjoy. With all that being said, let's get into it. The first stop on our journey today is located on the 2nd floor of the most popular club in all of Gielinor, the Falador Party Room. Or rather, it used to be, as nowadays this former hotspot for all partygoers has become a mere shadow of what it used to be. Memories of the once bustling local community's generosity have been replaced with content creators using the venue to offer a fair place to disperse their wealth, and also bad actors looking to offer a false sense of security into their victims before they strike. Shifting back to today, the party room resides just off the Falador Square, accompanied by various homes, Falador Park, and a bank close by. Although it is a sad state of affairs to remember the rise and fall of the popularity of Falador, it still remains one of the main cities of Gielinor, and its party room bar's location receives a 4 out of 5, leaving off a single point as you still need to enter the venue and go all the way upstairs for a drink. Moving our focus to the design and layout, this bar delivers a nostalgic message, bringing us back to a simpler time, akin to sitting in a Chuck E. Cheese awaiting a slice of pizza so moist you nearly have to drink it. Except instead of a Chuck E. Cheese, we are greeted by a large castle structure built to the Falador's standard white palette, almost replicating the true castle that towers over the center of the city. For the interior, there are 3 long tables to the south, each with only 1 chair allotted. There are also 2 more chairs on the eastern side of the room, presumably as extras. I feel this place has a very liminal feeling to it, being that it is so empty and seems almost unfinished. Given that the bar is supposed to be serving a party room full of about 50 anxious partygoers, it does seem as though the lack of seating would be to its detriment. I'm not sure how true that is, however, as I would compare this bar more to being a caterer at a music venue. Drinks are meant to be purchased and held while strolling the party room, crushing those multicolored balloons for a chance at some valuables. For its beautiful exterior, but unusual and empty interior, I'll be giving the bar in the Falador Party Room a 2 out of 5 for layout and design, as it's not meant to be an eye-catching bar and more of an accessory to the main event downstairs. Unfortunately for the Falador Party Room, the menu selection leaves quite a bit to be desired, as this bar only serves beer. Given this operates more as a catering service, this fact doesn't really surprise me too much, although I do believe that in its prime, the Falador Party Room would certainly have benefited from having food or other drinks to offer. I'll give this bar a 1 out of 5 for menu variety. This leaves this once great venue's bar with a modest score of 7 out of 15. Unfortunately, this place doesn't get too many visitors anymore, and even fewer make their way upstairs to enjoy a freshly poured beer. I can't possibly recommend visiting this bar unless you happen to be here while a content creator has filled its chest, or perhaps you'd like to just revisit the memories with a more mature perspective. Shout out to the 3rd floor of the party room, which is significantly more liminal and unusual than the bar on the 2nd floor, but I'll be going into greater detail into spaces like this in a future video. Okay, on to the next bar. Let's take a look here. Oh no. You've got to be kidding me. Our second bar once again resides underground, the entrance being an exposed manhole just north of Garant's fishy business in Port Sarim. We are of course discussing the Port Sarim Ratpit Bar. Only being accessible after full completion of the nightmarish rat catcher's quest, and being located underneath a fish shop of all places, this bar gets a 0 out of 5 for location. I mean, even when you climb down the ladder, you still need to walk past both rat pits all the way around to the very back just to get a drink. Unbelievable. For design and layout, well, it's a bar in an underground rat fighting arena. What do you expect? I mean, it essentially resides in a sewer, with exposed grates and puddles of what I could only imagine to be sewage not even 15 feet away from the seating area. Just because this rat pit bar has 10 pumps instead of 2 and 4 stools instead of 2 doesn't make it any more appealing to the eyes, or the nose for that matter. 0 out of 5 for design and layout, to the surprise of absolutely nobody. Finally, staying within the rat pit tradition, this bar serves both beer and stew, which does make me question the stew they are selling. There isn't any kitchen in this area at all. In fact, I don't even think there's a possible way to safely serve food down here. Where do they keep the stew? Is it in these crates? And if so, why are they stacked against a sewer grate? I couldn't imagine the sheer amount of bacteria just settling in the air down here, let alone near an open sewer grate. I suppose it is possible they're storing and cooking the stews with the range in the house north of the fishing store. Speaking of which, whose house is this exactly? And why is there a polling booth inside this house? Hey, this is Masilisk from the future. I hope you're liking the video so far. So, I ended up going into a really deep rabbit hole here that went far enough to make a completely separate video all on its own. I'll leave the link in the description for it, but I just thought I'd let you know, as I'm gonna skip over most of this rambling. Anyways, back to the video. There are a lot of unanswered questions that remain here, but one question I can answer is, what score does the Port Sarim Ratpit Bar receive for menu variety? In which case, the answer would be 2 out of 5 for serving both beer and stew. This leaves this miserable bar with a total score of 2 out of 15, which is very fitting for a place that people actively avoid at all times. Speaking of which, why does anybody even come here? I decided to ask around. This person's been having a blast and has won 5,000 coins already. I didn't have the heart to tell them how little that is in today's economy, but hopefully they'll learn their own lessons. This guy's luck hasn't been so high, however, as his degenerate behavior has caused him to start gambling his clothing away. Considering he's already addressing the possibility of losing his trousers, I suspect we will see a sad, naked man leaving the rat pits of Port Sarim very shortly. Lastly, this man here mentions that he is here to take people's money. But given the state of the previous customer, I reckon he'll be taking more than people's money at this point. Transitioning to an actual bar, we've made our way back to Falador to check out the Rising Sun Inn, located on the western side of Falador, found along the main path that goes out to the north entrance of the city. Near the bar, we have the Bank of Runescape, the Falador Hairdresser Salon, Flynn's Mace Market, and the Falador General Store, so there's no lack of things to do within walking distance. The surrounding area is very clean, and with 13 guards within the general vicinity, safety should be the last of anyone's concern. I'm very comfortable giving the Rising Sun Inn a perfect 5 out of 5 for location, as it's hard to get much better than this, being in the heart of one of the biggest cities in all of Gielinor. Falador, the capital of Asgarnia, is a very recognizable city, boasting a beautiful white stone architecture for every building within its walls. This wasn't always the case, however, as in the early days of RuneScape 2 and RuneScape Classic, the City of White was actually a city of gray stone, which adorned every building. Remnants of this past still exist in-game to this day, as if you adjust your camera just right looking into the Rising Sun Inn, you can actually see the old gray stone texture that used to be used. Beyond the minor history lesson, the Rising Sun Inn has a fairly comfortable feeling at first glance, but upon further inspection, I did notice a few anomalies. For one, there doesn't seem to be a solid color theme being used in the main seating room, as there is a solitary white and gold bar stool near the bar, 2 gaming tables decorated in a regal gold trimmed red upholstery, and 4 basic wooden tables, one which seems to be used as part of the bar. Speaking of the bar, this doesn't seem like much of a bar at all, as it's more akin to the wooden crates with spouts on top found within the Ratpit's bars that we've seen. The walls are decorated with a Saradomin sword and shield and what looks to be a Rising Sun banner near the bar. Moving upstairs, there are 6 more basic wooden tables, several basic wooden chairs and stools, and the walls are peppered with more swords, shields, and... Wait a second. The same 2 paintings found in the house in Port Sarim. Hey, Masilisk from the future again. We're just gonna skip past more of this theory crafting here. Ignore me. I feel this bar falls a bit short in terms of design and styling. There is certainly enough here to serve several people comfortably, but nothing really feels cohesive or intentional. And I almost wonder if the bar and wooden tables indicate that this is still under construction. Or perhaps the owner mismanaged the budget during the initial construction and has simply accepted everything for how it is. Speaking of which, how can this be considered an inn when there's no lodging to be found on the premises? This might also be explained further by the budgeting issues I just theorized. Either way, I'm not too impressed by the interior design or layout at all. But due to the beautiful exterior and otherwise functional interior, I will give the Rising Sun Inn a 3 out of 5 for design. Moving on to the menu selection, the Rising Sun Inn serves 3 different types of beer, being the Asgarnian Ale, Wizard's Mind Bomb, and the Dwarven Stout. This is the first bar we have seen that offers a different type of beer compared to the standard brew found across Gielinor, which is always good to see. During Alfred Grimhand's bar crawl, this bar does appear on the list to get a special menu item called the Hand of Death Cocktail. However, I don't feel it is fair to evaluate a bar's menu based off of an item that can only be acquired once, especially considering all the new bars that are being built that don't get added to this old mini-quest would all be punished by not being a part of it. Therefore, I'll be giving the Rising Sun Inn a 3 out of 5 for menu variety, for having 3 or more drinks available but no food for sale. This score would be higher if they offered food, as some localities require a substantial amount of food to be sold alongside alcohol. This brings our final tally for the Rising Sun Inn to a solid 11 out of 15. This bar is a staple of the city of Falador, and it's really hard to go wrong with popping in for an ice-cold Wizard's Mind Bomb after a long day of killing blue dragons. Just be sure to bring your own food when you plan to stay here for a while. We wouldn't want you ending up like the gentleman upstairs, who is in desperate need of some bread and a glass of water. Making our way back to Port Sarim, the next bar we have to look at today is none other than the Rusty Anchor Inn. This bar is just north of the ship that will take you to the Great Kurend, south of the main path that connects Rimington to Draenor Village. Definitely not a bad location, given it will catch foot traffic for anyone looking to travel to Entrana, Karamja, Crandor, etc. Being within a hotspot of traffic, right off the dock, but not being located within a major town will give this bar a solid 4 out of 5 for location. One fun way to get to this bar is to be sent here all the way from Shantae Pass in Al-Kharid. If you talk to Shantae and ask him what is this place, he will say that it is here to prevent outlaws from getting out of the desert. If you respond that you are definitely an outlaw and threaten his life, he will have you arrested in the jail just to the west. When he tries to extort 5 gold pieces from you, if you tell him, "No thanks, you're not having any of my money," he will threaten to transport you to a maximum security prison in Port Sarim if you don't pay up. If you still say no, then you will be sent to the maximum security prison off the southern side of Port Sarim. All you have to do to break out is right-click the cell door and pick the lock. After a few tries, you will escape and be free to spend your 5 coins on some ice-cold beer at the Rusty Anchor Inn. Speaking of the Rusty Anchor Inn, let's have a look at the design and layout of this bar. From the front, it's obvious that they're going for a nautical theme. By the 3 blue marlin trophies hanging off the front of the roof, the barrels of fish outside, and even a ship's anchor is present in the front of this place. Moving to the interior, we have a decent amount of seating, with 2 tables in the center surrounded by 5 stools, another solitary table with twin stools on either side, and yet again we have a bar labeled as an inn, and yet there's no lodging to be seen, which is a shame to see. The bar itself is the same wooden crates we saw in the Rising Sun Inn, although I feel they fit a bit more in this bar, given they're going for a more rustic nautical theme. The walls are adorned with another blue marlin trophy, some captain wheels, and fishing nets to complete the look. I really do appreciate the look of this place. The matching theme is always welcome and really ties everything together. It does disappoint me that there's no lodging here when it's implied that there's supposed to be by the name, so I'll have to dock at a point for that. Other than that, there really isn't a ton here to be excited about besides the theming, as at the end of the day it's still a cramped portside bar. I'll be giving the Rusty Anchor Inn a score of 3 out of 5 for design and layout. Finally, the menu selection is about as bland as it gets, serving only the generic beer of Gielinor. Which does pose an interesting question. If they only serve beer at this bar, then why is there a bottle of whiskey and a bottle of brandy on display behind the bar? Perhaps these are only here for personal use by the owner, or maybe these are used to create the Black Skull Ale, which can be acquired during completion of the Alfred Grimhand's bar crawl. Either way, it does seem disingenuous to keep those bottles on display at a bar that only regularly serves ale. 1 out of 5 is the score I'm giving this bar for menu variety. This humble portside inn ends up with a respectable 8 out of 15 in total, which puts it right within the average we typically see for these bars. This bar doesn't really need any recommendations, as its purpose is just to serve anybody who's just finished a long voyage and needs to wind down. It is a shame that we see a lack of food, other beverages, or even lodging here, but I'm sure the regulars don't mind one bit, given that they've been waddling around for quite some time now. I'll leave you with a powerful quote from Redbeard Frank out front. Arr! It's time to head north towards Troll Country, as our next stop takes us to the gloomy principality of Burthorpe, in which the Toad and Chicken resides. So, technically this bar has 2 separate locations in Burthorpe, as there is a smaller version found inside the Burthorpe Games Room. However, I don't find it to be necessary to count the smaller variant as a separate bar, as they both have the same stock, and I'd like to think the Toad and Chicken is more of a permanent catering partner for the Games Room, but the actual bar resides just across the main road. Speaking of the main location, although it does sit directly in the heart of Burthorpe, it is still in a military principality while war is still ongoing, with an enemy that is quite literally across the border of the state line. I'm honestly surprised there aren't any travel restrictions put in place preventing innocent civilians from getting themselves caught in the crossfire of battle. I cannot in good faith provide any score higher than a 2 out of 5 for location, leaving 2 points for the soldiers and small yet dedicated local population who decide against relocation during this tense conflict, who have a perfect place to go to wind down. I did attempt to speak with the soldiers that regular this establishment about how they feel about the state of the current events going on, but unfortunately, they all speak in Latin for some reason. Taking a look at the aesthetics of this bar, well, it certainly won't be turning any heads. Gray stone walls decorated with
another suspicious painting.
Hardwood floors, gold-trimmed red bar stools, and wooden tables and chairs that give off a very familiar experience. The lack of color certainly matches the bleak design of the rest of the area, but it doesn't necessarily do us any favors in terms of standing out. Moving upstairs, we do finally see some decent lodging up here, with 3 different bedrooms, all with different sleeping arrangements. I do wonder why they have red curtains over 2 of the windows, but the standard white curtains over the rest. Perhaps they ran out of the color they needed and they had to improvise, but considering those anomalies are contained within separate rooms, I wouldn't consider them particularly offensive. This bar is also the first one we've seen that offers an outdoor seating area, which I can certainly appreciate. One unique trait of this bar is that there is a secret kept beneath the floorboards, as if you speak to Tostig, the bartender, and refuse a drink, he'll ask you something about a squirrel singing in a grove. Now here's the interesting bit. We have the option to reply back with yes, and the black cat dances in the sink. Which seems like a completely random thing to say, but the bartender retorts that we'll be wanting the trapdoor behind the bar. That trapdoor leads us into the Rogue's Den, a secret hideout. How does our player know the answer to the secret code Tostig has? There's no quest that I know of that gives this information. In fact, if you go to Tostig on a fresh account and make the same dialogue options, you're still given the same option to reply with the secret code. I'm not sure if we'll ever get the answer to this question, but I do find it rather interesting and worth mentioning here. The Rogue's Den is a popular place to go when looking to acquire the Rogue equipment set by grinding the Maze Exploration minigame down here. There also happens to be an infinite fire right beside a banker by the name of Emerald Benedict, which makes it a very common spot to train cooking early on. Lastly, Grace also resides down here, who you'll have to go to if you're looking to purchase your graceful outfit. All of these things are great to see, and considering seemingly everybody has access to this area despite its supposed secrecy, I will consider it a convenient extension to the Toad and Chicken. Its bland yet functional interior design featuring adequate lodging upstairs and useful extracurricular amenities below make me confident in offering this bar a very respectable 4 out of 5 for design and layout, leaving off a point for lack of creative aesthetic theming. Shifting our attention to the menu offerings, the Toad and Chicken offers the exact same beverages found at the Rising Sun Inn in Falador, being the Asgarnian Ale, Wizard's Mind Bomb, and the Dwarven Stout. I am curious if this implies that this bar shares the same alcohol distributor as the Rising Sun Inn, given the exact menu match. It shouldn't be much of a surprise that the Toad and Chicken gets a menu variety score of 3 out of 5, for again having 3 or more drinks available, but no food for sale. This leaves the Toad and Chicken with a final score of 9 out of 15, just 1 point shy of the Rising Sun Inn with the same menu selection. I would be hesitant to recommend coming to visit this bar unless you have a means to defend yourself and are comfortable with enjoying a drink during an active war zone. An interesting fact regarding the Toad and Chicken, however, is that the name is in reference to a basilisk, which is supposed to hatch from a chicken's egg incubated by a toad. Curious, considering my name is a variation on the very word basilisk, but I can assure you that this reference does not in any way influence my opinions about this bar, nor does it affect the scores I have given today. The final bar we have to assess is located in the Dwarven shortcut created to easily travel across White Wolf Mountain, aptly named the White Wolf Tunnel, which houses the White Wolf Tunnel Pub. I'm sure at one point this location was some sort of a hotspot for travel, but nowadays the only people really coming through this tunnel are here to massacre dwarves. It also happens to be very out of the way, being completely separated from any main path at both entrances, and they also both reside beyond the outskirts of Taverley and Catherby, respectively. In order to access the tunnel, you also have to complete the fishing contest quest, which adds yet another barrier to entry. There is some good news, however, as there is a minecart that will take you straight to Keldegrim and back, which does add another direct connection to a city, and that deserves at least 1 point. I cannot in good faith offer this bar any score higher than a 1 out of 5 for location, however. I'm sure this bar saw more use 15 plus years ago, but now it remains more of an ongoing crime scene. Taking a look at the styling, there isn't really much here to write home about, unfortunately. It certainly looks to be in a tunnel with its stone walls and wooden supports, hard-packed dirt flooring, and 8 basic wooden tables without a single chair or stool to pair with them. Along the southern wall, there's an alcove where Holloway's crossbow shop resides, which is an interesting feature to a bar. But I'm curious as to why the crossbow shop only stocks the components to create them, but no fully assembled weapons. I wonder if there are regulations preventing functional weapons from being sold in the same place that serves alcohol, but if that is the case, then why wouldn't Holloway just move his business outside the bar? Obviously this is only speculation, but when I'm looking for a crossbow, I'm not very keen on having to assemble it myself, especially considering I would have to bring my very own crossbow string along. Moving past Holloway, I'm quite unimpressed with the design of this pub. There are no decorations at all, and the functionality is being carried solely by the existence of tables alone. There isn't even a bar here, despite its name. Given its existence isn't necessarily offensive, and its spacious interior will give the White Wolf Tunnel pub a mere 1 out of 5 for design and layout. Finally, looking into the menu, well, there isn't one. Just like the Long Hall in Barbarian Village we covered in the Misthalin episode, there is no bartender here to serve you anything. The closest thing this bar has to a menu is an inebriated dwarven engineer suggesting we take one of the 3 room-temperature dwarven stouts rotting away on one of the wooden tables. No thanks, Korvac. This gives the White Wolf Tunnel pub a 0 out of 5 for menu variety, and I question why this is marked as a pub on the game map in the first place. There's no bar here, and no bartender, no menu, and no seating. It almost feels like the label was a mistake, or at the very least an intended functionality that was phased out later in the construction of this tunnel. The final score for this hidden bar comes to a lackluster 2 out of 15. This isn't really much of a bar at all, and more of just a place that a couple of drunk dwarves happen to be in. I obviously can't recommend coming here for a drink, but if you are in the market for a new crossbow, you could certainly pay Holloway a visit. Just don't forget your crossbow string, as some assembly is required. Moving on to the final rankings for all the bars in Asgarnia, we will actually begin with a tie for last place, being the Port Sarim Ratpit Bar and the White Wolf Tunnel Pub, both with 2 out of 15 points. I can't really believe I'm saying this right now, but if you're trying to decide on which of these awful bars to go to, I would prefer the Ratpit Bar, as at least they're serving something, unlike the dwarven counterpart. In 4th place, we have the Falador Party Room Bar, with a 7 out of 15 total score. Not a bad place to get a drink, but certainly exists more out of convenience than anything else. Next up in 3rd place, we have Port Sarim's very own Rusty Anchor Inn, with 8 out of 15 total points. If you appreciate the nautical theming of this bar, but are not bothered by its small size or lack of lodging despite its name, this is a fine place to visit. For second place, we have the Toad and Chicken in Burthorpe, which, besides being located about as close to an active war zone as you can get, it's a pretty decent place to get a drink or even stay the night if needed in the available rooms upstairs. Finally, the best bar in Asgarnia is none other than the Rising Sun Inn in Falador, with its decent menu selection, excellent location, and adequate design, giving it a solid 11 out of 15 points. It's really hard to fault paying this bar a visit, especially if you happen to be in the area and are looking for a place to wind down. Just don't be fooled by the name, as there is no lodging available here. It looks like you guys seem to agree with the rankings here as well, given the results of the community poll I made, which was asking you guys what you thought would be the best bar in Asgarnia, which got over 300 votes. Before I leave today, I'd also like to make a correction from the Misthalin episode. When giving the score for the Blue Moon Inn in Varrock, I said that the final score added up to a 9 out of 15, which doesn't add up to the individual scores that I gave it. Looking back, I disagree with my leniency to add an additional point for serving raw cabbage, considering it is nearly inedible when raw. Due to this, the menu score for the Blue Moon Inn is now a 1 out of 5, which keeps the total score at 9 out of 15, which I feel is fair. I would also like to address the fact that although technically you do learn the recipe for making a steak sandwich from the cook in this bar, just like my reasoning behind ignoring Alfred Grimhand's bar crawl specialty beverages, I cannot in good faith include this sandwich into its menu variety, as you can't just come in and order it. I will only be scoring the bars based off their standard menu options moving forward, in an attempt to keep every bar on a level playing field, regardless of being involved in a quest or mini-quest. And that's it. Next, we will explore the bars in the Kandarin region, another step in our quest to find the best bar in all of Gielinor. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, please consider liking and subscribing to get notified when I make more content. I would also like to mention that if you're interested in supporting me and my future content creation even further, I have now opened up channel memberships with 3 available tiers to choose from. This is the part of the video where I'd list any names of my Legend and Bob subscribers, but I don't have any quite yet. I am doing content creation full-time now, so any support at all is greatly appreciated. With all that being said, thank you again, and take it easy.